Hello, this is Mrs. Groves. Today we're going to be covering section 9.7 and we are going to be learning about factoring special cases. Now, you don't really have to worry about factoring special cases, you just need to know how to factor. My tip to you is always start by filling in what you know when you try to factor. So, we love these problems because A equals 1. And so we're going to have our two sets of parentheses. And we know that this is going to be x times x, which gives us x squared. This is positive, which means our signs have to be the same. That's negative. So it means both signs are negative. We want two factors that multiply to 25 and add to 10. Well, the possible factors are 1 and 25 and 5 and 5. So if we take negative 5 times negative 5, we get positive 25. And if we take negative 5 plus negative 5, we get negative 10. And we always, and that's it, that's all we have to do. And we always want to mentally multiply to make sure we factored correctly. So we have x times x, x squared, negative 5x, and negative 5x is negative 10x. Negative 5 times negative 5 is positive 25. Done. All right, so the next problem, as I said, we fill in what we know. We know that we're going to have to figure out what to do with this 9. Okay? And the factors of 9 are 1 and 9, 3 and 3. But we do know that we're going to have x times x. And we're going to have a number in front of the x to get 9x squared. We also know that 1 is a prime number. So for our last term, the only way we can get it is 1 times 1. Again, this is positive, which means my signs have to be the same. That's negative, so they both have to be negative. All right, and remember we did kind of brackets before to visualize this. And so we need to come up with how do we get 9x squared, okay, multiplying the inner and the outer terms and have it be a sum of negative 6. Well, if I put in 3 times 3, that gives us our 9x squared. Oh, everything's filled in. So let's just check to see if it works. 3x times 3x, 9x squared. 3x times negative 1, put that in memory bank, negative 3x, and negative 3x, negative 6x. Negative 1 and negative 1 is positive 1. So there is the answer. So now we have this problem right here. The factors of 9 are 1 and 9, 3 and 3. Factors of 4 are 1 and 4, 2 and 2. So now we're going to set up our two sets of parentheses. We know that we're going to have and put these little brackets here to kind of help you visualize how you're going to arrange these terms. Well, you know one thing. This is positive and this is negative, so my signs are both negative. And as I look at this, and I'm saying to myself, 9 times 4, well, that's 36. That's not going to get me anywhere near that. So I'm going to guess that my first term is going to be 3x times 3x, which is going to give me 9x squared. And now I need to multiply these terms and these terms, okay, using either one of these pairs to get negative 12. Well, 2 times 3 is 6. That seems like maybe we put 2 and 2 in here, and we go with this pair. So we have 3x minus 2, 3x minus 2. All right, so let's multiply, make sure this is correct. 9x squared, good. Negative 6x and negative 6x, negative 12x, good. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. So that is the correct answer. All right. So we've got our last one. And maybe you're seeing a pattern here. Here, my factors of 4 are 1 and 4, 2 and 2. My factors of 25, 1 and 25, 5 and 5. All right. And I set up my 2 sets of parentheses. And I put my visual brackets on the outer. And so I know that my signs, because this is positive and this is positive, my signs have to be positive. And I'm saying, geez, I've been really having good luck using 2 and 2 as opposed to 4 and 1. So I'm going to put 2x and 2x. That's going to give me 4x squared. And I need to get to 20. Well, 2 times 5, well, that's going to give me 10x. 5 times 2 is 10. So 10x and 10x gives me 20x. Excellent. So multiplying it, 2x times 2x, 4x squared. We saw 10x and 10x. Okay, that gives me 20x. And 5 times 5 is 25. Great. There's my answer. Now, are you noticing anything unusual or special about these binomials? And you say, wow, they're the same. In all 4 cases, they're the same. So because this is a binomial, x minus 5, I can square it. So these two are equal. And I can rewrite this 3x minus 1. I've got 2 of them squared. All right, here I can write 3x minus 2 squared. So either way, these are correct answers. And now I can rewrite this 2x plus 5 squared. Understanding basic factoring, you were able to factor this without knowing that you were doing a special case. These are binomial squares. So what do you notice is the pattern? Okay, for each of these. I have x and x squared, 3x and 9x squared, 3x and 9x squared, 2x and 4x squared. Well, that seems to always be, take that number and it's squared. What do I notice about the last terms? Well, 5 squared is 25. 1 squared is 1. 2 squared is 4. 5 squared is 25. And how do you know what the signs are? Well, the middle term tells you the signs. Negative, 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 positive. All right. So this is factoring, okay? This is perfect square trinomials, okay? Sometimes we call them binomial squares. So the pattern is right here. When I want to, if I notice, first thing you want to do is whenever you look at one of these quadratic trinomials, is the first term a perfect square? Is the last term a perfect square? Well, to be in this pattern, the first and the last terms are perfect squares. The last term always has to be positive. Okay? And remember that the standard quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c. And then if we're solving it, it's equal to 0. Right. So the last term, c, has to be positive. Now, if you take the square root of x, which is x squared is x, and you take the square root of 25, that's 5, okay? You multiply those, you're going to get 5x, and double it, that's going to give you your middle term. All right? So square root here, 3x times 1 is 3x, doubled is 6. Here, 3x times 2 is 6x, doubled is 12. Here, the square root, 2x times 5 is 10x, doubled is 20. All right, so that's the first pattern we're looking at. The second one is, okay, I only have 2 terms here. So this can be written x squared plus 0x minus 25. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. So, because this middle term isn't, we don't have a b term, we could put that here. So we, in factoring this, what 2 terms do we multiply to get negative 25 that sum to 0? So I set up my 2 sets of parentheses. The only way to get x squared is x and x. The signs have to be positive and negative, since c is negative. And the only factors of 25 are 1 and 25 and 5 and 5. Well, what's 5 minus 5? Well, that's 0. 5 and 5. Okay, so x squared minus 5x, put that in memory bank, plus 5x, well, negative 5x and 5x is 0. All right? And then 5 times negative 5 is negative 25. So there you go. So you're going to see a pattern here soon, but if you don't, we can just take 9x squared, we don't have a middle term, plus 0x minus 4. So we know that we're going to set up two sets of parentheses. All right. We know that our signs have plus and minus. And we notice that's a perfect square and that's a perfect square. So let's try using the perfect squares. If we have 3x times 3x, well, that gives us 9x squared. All right? And if we put 2 and 2, 2 times negative 2 gives us negative 4. And if we multiply the inner and outer terms, we're going to get negative 6x plus 6x is 0. It cancels out. So this is correct. So this is called the difference of two squares. And the pattern is when you see only a quadratic and you see only two terms, ask yourself, are they perfect squares? And then ask yourself, are they separated by a negative sign? So this pattern right here is there's only two terms. The first and last terms are perfect squares, and they're separated by a negative sign. So that's the difference of two squares. You can pause the video and take these notes at any time. So now we're going to do some practice problems. First thing we're going to do is we're going to factor these. So I want you to pause the video and I want you to try to factor these four problems yourself. Okay. And then after you've done that, I'm going to be factoring them while you've paused the video. Okay. All right, so I notice here that's a perfect square and that's a perfect square. So I'm going to try my luck. And I'm going to have 5x and 5x, which gives me 25x squared. And 4 and 4. 4 times 4 is 16. Okay. And then I am going to, the signs have to be positive. Okay. So the signs have to be positive. All right. So here we go. There you go. 25x squared, 20x, and 20x is 40x. 4 times 4 is 16. Right. Here, I notice two terms. They're perfect squares, separated by a negative sign. So I'm thinking it's that second pattern that we saw. And so I'm going to say 4x and 4x gives me 16x squared. 5 times 5 gives me 25. And my signs are opposites. So if I multiply the inner and the outer terms, 20x minus 20x is 0. They cancel out. Great. All right, here we go. Perfect square, perfect square. Well, let's see how that goes. Two x and 2x gives me 4x squared. 3 times 3 gives me 9. And I have my 2. So I double check by multiplying this. 2x times 2x, 4x squared. 6x and 6x is 12x. 3 times 3 is 9. Great. And here, it's two terms. They're perfect squares separated by a negative. Okay, so I'm going to get 5x, 25x squared. 2 times 2 is 4. I've got a plus and a minus. All right, so that is factored. So hopefully you got these answered factored. Now we're going to go and solve them. Right. So this one right here, you only have to solve one of these factors. You don't have to solve both because you're going to get the same answer. So here you're going to get 5x plus 4 squared equals 0. I set 5x plus 4 equal to 0. Subtract 4 from both sides. I get 5x equals negative 4. Divide by 5. X equals negative 4/5. All right. And make sure to check your solutions in the original equation. All right, so I'm going to work on this one with you. All right. So here I'm going to go to my original equation. 25, I'm going to use parentheses because I have to put in negative 4/5. That is squared plus 40 times negative 4/5. Oops. Okay. Plus 16. All right. And so when I checked it, I got 0 equals 0. Cha-ching, it checks, we're happy. So now I want you to pause this video and solve these. And remember, you set each of these factors equal to 0. You solve it, and you check it. So pause the video, and I will put up the answers for you to check after you've completed them. Make sure you do these problems on your own and then check them with my answers. In fact, you might find a mistake. And if you do, email me. So here we set each factor equal to 0. We solved each factor. Right? And then we plugged in the solution into the original equation and we checked both of these answers. Here, the two factors were the same, so I only had to solve one. And again, I checked it. Here, the factors are different, so I had to set each factor equal to 0, solve each factor, and then check each factor in the original equation. All right, now we're going to do the final problem. Putting everything that we've been doing in the last 3 or 4 sections together. This problem solved by completely factoring and checking all solutions. Your first step is always to factor out a greatest common factor, right? So what is the common factor here to all these? Well, 6 goes in all of them, and x goes into all of them. And remember, the common variable factor is the one that has the smallest exponent. So here, x is the smallest exponent. So now I can take this 6x and I'm going to factor it, and it's going to be equal to 0. So you can either divide these or you can mentally do the multiplying. 6x times x squared gives us 6x cubed. 5x times 6x gives us 30x squared. Okay, 6x times negative 6 gives us negative 36x. Right, so I've taken out the greatest common factor. And so I bring this down. I have my 6x. That pen's running out. And then I have to factor this. Got my 2 sets of parentheses. The leading coefficient is 1, so this is pretty easy factoring, because I'm going to get x times x. That gives me x squared. My factors of 6 are 1 and 6, 2 and 3. My signs have to be positive and negative, or you could do negative and positive, doesn't matter. They have to be opposite signs. All right? So I need 2 factors here that add to 5. Well, the difference between 6 and 1 is 5. So then I just have to figure out, where do I put the 6 and where do I put the 1? So the 6 goes here, and the 1 goes here, and I multiply to make sure that I don't make a mistake. X times x, x squared, negative 6x plus x, okay? And I made a mistake, right? This is positive, and sometimes I hate working with pen, okay? And that's negative, right? So this one's negative. And I found that by making sure that I multiplied. X times x, x squared, 6x minus x gives me my 5x, much better. Negative 1 times 6 is negative 6. So now I take each factor and I set them equal to 0. So I'm going to get 6x equals 0. X minus 1 equals 0. X plus 6 equals 0. So for this first one, I can divide by 6 mentally, and I get x equals 0. All right? Then I check this. And when you check 0, you're always really happy. I go back and I check, because 0 cubed is 0 times 6. Well, that's going to give me 0. Plug in 0. That gives me 0. Plug in 0. That gives me 0. So 0 equals 0. Cha-ching. That checks. All right. Here, I add 1 to both sides, and I get x equals 1. Okay, 1 minus 1 is 0. I go back and I'm going to check it. 6, 1 cubed plus 30, 1 squared, minus 36 times 1 equals 0. So 6 plus 30 minus 36 equals 0. 0 equals 0. Cha-ching, it checks. My last one here, mentally subtract 6 from both sides. X equals negative 6. Okay, you can check it. In your notes, it's always good to show all the steps so that you can go back, especially when you're studying for a big test or the final exam. All right, so we're going to have 6 times negative 6 cubed plus 30 times negative 6 squared minus 36 times negative 6 equals 0. Okay, make that a little bit bigger for that one. And I'm going to use my friendly calculator to do this. It's nice that I've written it out, because now I know what to put into the calculator. So I have 6 parentheses, negative 6. Okay, it would help if I turned it on. So here, clear it. 6 parentheses, negative 6. Now this is cubed, so I have to use this caret button, caret 3. And for this calculator, I have to move it, arrow it down so that it does the calculations properly. Plus 30 parentheses, negative 6 squared, minus 36 parentheses, negative 6. And if I've plugged everything in correctly, hopefully I'm going to get 0. And I did. So 0 equals 0. Cha-ching, it checked. Okay, so that's more practice on factoring and factoring special cases, which is just basic factoring with a few patterns. And put these in your notes. And I will be creating another video soon to share with you. Have a good day.